Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome. It is, of course, another Tuesday evening. Only one place to be on a Tuesday evening, of course, and that's right here, Super League Raw Weekly. As you can see, we're having a house party tonight. Oh, yes, the boys are in for a session. Good to see Joel Scholes, the Huddersfield Giant there. Good evening, Joel.
Good evening, how are you?
Very well, my mate. And, of course, Steph, good evening to you.
Good evening. I don't know if to take this as an insult, but Mrs. Sale said to me before the programme, can we change it to Super League Raw Daily? I think she's enjoying the time off.
Well, I mean, I must admit, forgive me, I am looking forward to a Challenge Cup week. With that one last night with Derek, hopefully people enjoyed the special last night with Derek. I've been up against it today. I need a break. I mean, God, I've only just come back off holiday, boys. I've been behind on in the sheds and everything. It's been a proper clamour to get it all done. But anyway, we're on top. We're on good form,
mate.
Absolutely. Oh, proper brew that, mate, as well. Good man. Right. Well, welcome everybody. A lots to get through as always tonight. So let's get into a bit of news. Andy Last out, of course, of the Castleford Tigers. It looked a little bit tasty at full time. The fans didn't seem very happy. Joe, were you there?
No, I couldn't make it. So that I was working.
Did you know anybody who was there?
Yeah, Freddie were definitely there. And I think
did you get any feedback? Any feedback in terms of full time? What it was like?
Yeah, probably was. From our side, it was partying. But as you might,
you lot were. What about the cast side?
Yeah, apparently there were some people that weren't leaving the grounds or something.
That's right. Yeah.
A bit of protesting.
Right. Protesting, yeah. Really poor. I mean, when you consider last day, I mean, how he lasted as long as he did, I don't know. But yeah, I mean, that writing on the wall, wasn't it? Really was writing on the wall on that one. And John Keir is being linked this evening. Don't know what our Castleford fans think about that. Obviously, that's going to be I would have thought, a stopgap between now and the end of the season. But obviously, did good things at Wakey, didn't he?
I think he worked at Batley as well, and Lingard work under him at Batley. So I think Keir's got quite an association with Castleford. So, and he's obviously the Great Escape artist when he did it for Wakefield against Castleford, funnily enough. So I think from a story perspective, wouldn't it be fantastic if he did go back to Castleford? And for that Wakefield game, obviously there'd be plenty of headlines written on that one, I think.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, I'll call it now. There's only one game of the week when Super League returns. It has to be that Wakefield Castleford game. It's a huge one in terms of survival. So I think there's some other decent games that weekend. Warrington Leeds, that's a fascinating one as well. But that's got to be game of the week. So let's do a crossover Castleford to Leeds, because out of left field completely, I think probably took a lot of people by surprise. Blake Austin moving across to Castleford Tigers. And the thing that really astounded me was it was clearly done without the consent or knowledge of Rowan Smith. Now, my question would be, would Gary Hetherington act that way if his managers was like a Sean Wayne, if it was a Tony Smith? I mean, what does that say about chairman and coach? I mean, we had Derek on last night talking about his relation for Adrian Lamb. What does that say about the relationship between Gary Hetherington and Rowan Smith? And is Rowan Smith's position tenable? Over to you guys. What's your thoughts?
It was a bizarre one for me that, and I think they've openly said, Rowan's openly said about it, that he wasn't involved in it. And I don't think, going back to Andy Last, that he was, in with it. It seemed like it was Widdop who's recruited him, from what I can gather in the thing, to come and try and save him. So yeah, it's a real bizarre situation, and you've got to question, is the coach's position tenable if he hasn't got control over his recruitment?
Absolutely. What's your thoughts, Joe?
I always thought, I might be wrong, but I always thought that Rowan Smith was to come in to try and put his own stamp on the team and let him work his magic. Well, to be fair, that should be the case for any coach, really. But I think he was coming with the provisos the same as like Ian Watson was with us. Leave him to do the recruitment, leave him to do the trying to get his players in. But it speaks volumes when, like Steph said, he's openly and candidly said that he knew nothing about it. And obviously that I presume it all stemmed from that the thing that Blake Austin brought out. That
yeah.
But with Gary Hetherington, I don't know the ins and outs, But essentially, it's like Gary said, right, I've had enough now. I'll get rid of him.
Yeah, I mean, Austin's got form for that. I mean, his time at the end at Warrington wasn't the best either, and you know, so and I think when Leeds came to our place and beat us, and I thought it was quite telling when there was the two interviews, Austin where he called out the club, did he want me? And then the next interview was with Smith saying we'll conduct our business behind closed doors, and that was a complete, obviously, two styles of handling the situation, just colliding the clubs and Austin's, and of course that social media leak as well. But I think when a player is when a player leaves in those circumstances, it does for me personally. How if I'm Rowan Smith, I can't imagine he's very happy at Leeds at this moment in time.
No, I don't think so. And you know, they've had an okay season, Leeds. They've had some great results, and then they've had some really poor ones as well. So it's not like they're setting the world on fire either, you know. And it's a tough one. It's a tough one for them. I think they need to recruit well for next season, especially. But how can you do that now when who's in charge there? You know.
Well, it's not just that, mate, is it? I mean, look at who they're losing. You know,
Yeah.
Walters exit stage right off. They lost Lehman earlier in the season. Now Austin's gone. We know that Caesar's going at the end of the season. I mean, whether that's a loss or not, that's open to debate for people that are there. Rumours that Bentley's moving on at the end of the season. You know, Oledzki, for me, not the player that he was last year. You know, we haven't even. I mean, all of last year, Joe, you'll know this as well, mate. You know, all of last year, we're talking about Wormsley and Oledzki, aren't we? Time and time again, since we've started doing this, we've always given him big raps, but you know, he is not compared to the likes of Holroyd, Dupree, Amone, Mulhern, Vaughan. You know, they're flying off the tongue. People who've made a big statement in middle units this season. Where's Mikhail Oledzki?
Yeah. Yeah, and the other one as well is they've suffered by losing, you know, their X Factor player in Newman as well. You know, that's cost them big time, that, because he, as volatile as he was, and as a young lad still learning it, he was their little X Factor player. So obviously that was a huge loss for them as well. So, and now Myler, again, coming to the end of his career, he's another one that's out now. So, you know, they've done it tough this year, to be fair to them with that. But, you know, it's how much of that do you bring on yourself as well?
I mean, you're delighted, Joel, aren't you? Because, you know, there's no love lost where Leeds are concerned with Huddersfield, is there?
Yeah, no, but I've got some friends who are big Leeds fans. And from talking to them and people I know that are fans of Cass as well in the family, for me, and I kind of noticed this morning, it kind of feels like Leeds and Cass have a similar situation in the back room. And what I don't like is there's no correlation between the coaching staff and the higher directors. There seems to be no communication. So it's clear from an outsider's point of view that something isn't right with Rowan Smith and Gary Hetherington. And then you look at Cass, even worse. They've had, how many coaches have had this year? 3? Is it they've had over a year?
They bring somebody in. Started with Radford, then Lasty, and now it'll be a third, A
third. So you kind of think, right, is it the coach's fault? Is it the player's fault? Or is it not the board's fault, in part, to at least have these communications and talk about it? Because without the support, the coach can't do a right lot. No, he might lose a dressing room then after that.
Well, and it's not just that, mate. I mean, we've seen it many a time in sport. I mean, you know, talk about Leeds. I mean, remember the revolt with Brian Clough at Leeds, where the players went behind his back to the boardroom, you know, and that, you know, and if it's that type of hierarchy, if players know that, you know, they can bypass a manager in any organisation, there's got to be a chain of command. Once that chain of command is broke, whoever's been bypassed, the position's untenable. It's as simple as that. Because, you know, if Gary Hetherington, you know, I remember back there when I was managing, if somebody tried to come to me, you know, I'd always say, have you spoken to your manager? And if the answer was no, go and speak to your manager. And if you're not happy with the decision that's been made, come with your manager to have a conversation with me. You always keep that chain of command. You have to. The moment you break it, then you've undermined your manager. It's as simple as that.
There's no stop then, is there?
No, mate. Right. I mean, Kev Wall as well. I mean, yeah, get in the chat, everybody. Good evening, everybody. I'm just going to give a couple of shouts outs. Here we go. Trisha Woodworth, good evening to you. Anthony Charnley. Kevin Wall said, makes no sense that a coach isn't in charge of recruitment. Couldn't agree with you more. Graham Parish, good evening to you. Vicky Sale, keeping tabs on her husband. Always good to see. Harvey Davies, Peter Hardman. Mikey Pickles, what a great name, Mikey Pickles, fantastic. I wonder if he's a Cass or a Leeds fan because they're in pickles. Anyway, that's another story, isn't it? Right, let's go to my club. Then announced yesterday that Sam Burgess is coming in at the Warrington Wolves for 2024. It's fair to say that on the social media pages there is an absolute divide here. Some people getting involved in terms of non-rugby comments, let's put it that way, reference the appointments of potentially Sean Long as well. Obviously, Martin Gleeson reported to be coming back as a coach from now till the end of the season. Again, from a rugby perspective, he's been doing great things in rugby union recently, but again, there's a shadow in terms of what happened with Mr. Gleeson off the field in his time in rugby league. So there's a lot of questions being asked there in terms of can Leopards change their spots. That's how Leopards change their spots. Hey, there you go.
Tower us with that bush.
Yeah, no, steady on there. But there's a lot of that. That said, if you look at it from a rugby league perspective, and I'll get your views on this in a sec, but Sam Burgess, Russell Crowe's made no hasn't hid the fact that he sees Sam Burgess as long-term South Sydney Rabbitohs coach. He's been doing a lot of work since his retirement. He's worked under Wayne Bennett. He's a coach at South Sydney Rabbitohs as well. So in terms of Sam, you know what? One thing that Sam's going to have an advantage on, and what surprised me is how short of memories some people have got, especially our friends over in St. Helens, because what had Justin Albrook won before he came to Super League? What had Kristen Wolf won? You look at Nathan Brown when he came over. What did he won? The amount of coaches that have come over to Michael Maguire, there's another one. The amount of coaches that have come over, made the name in the UK, won a Super League grand final or won trophies or done well, and then gone back to the NRL as coach. Why can't that be Sam Burgess? And I think, in closing from me with regards to Burgess, when you're a Wigan Warriors and you promote from within, like they do, Matt P, Sean Wayne, immediately, because of your heritage and because you've worked with the academy, because you've worked with the kids, you are always going to have that respect of the dressing room day one. Regardless of your rugby league career, you're going to have the respect of the dressing room. The problem with Warrington is they've always brought coaches in. When Smith came in, he galvanised the club. We brought Price and he got a Challenge Cup. Again, no coaching experience in the UK. And the thing for me about Burgess is that when you, for example, bring in, I don't know, if you bring in somebody like a Darryl Powell, not a single person probably in the Warrington dressing room remembers Darryl Powell, the player.
Yeah.
Not one of them. They'd have to go onto Wikipedia to Google search what had Darryl Powell done in the game. That won't be needed with Sam Burgess. Sam Burgess is literally just retired. He's a Pep Guardiola character. Everybody's got absolute respect for the rugby league player that is Sam Burgess. So straight away when he walks in there, there's that immediate respect because everybody in that changing room remembers Sam Burgess, the player. And if he's done well in terms of his coaching, in terms of where he's up to now, his coaching badges and his philosophies around the game, if that's equally as impressive to the players as what his resume is in terms of his playing career, then actually, I think Sam Burgess could do quite well because he'll get the dressing room. The dressing room will have nothing but respect for him. So, that's my take as a Warrington fan. I think, it's a massive gamble. It's a huge gamble when you consider, what we've done over the last 3 or 4 years in the coaching to bring Sam in, who, let's be fair, is a bit of a rookie. But it could be, it could be a disaster. It could be one of the best things they've ever done. We're not going to know until next year. Joel, start with you. What was your take on this? What's your thoughts? Can Slamming Sam do it?
Yeah, he can definitely do it. I think my concern for the Wire fans is more that the reasons why and how long he's going to stay for. So we know the contract's 2 years. That's okay. The problem is then, right, is so any team, especially a club like Warrington, Leeds, Wigan, and all these massive clubs, they command results. Regardless of who's behind the helm, they command results. For any coach, regardless of who you are, and the position that you hold, it's always going to take, whether you have a full pre-season or not, it's going to take a full year to understand your club, your players, and the players to start to learn your processes, etc., etc. Yeah. The second year is a year you really stamp your own process into things, and the players start to believe in you and see what's going on. The worry for me is that Warrington is such a massive club. They put all this, money into Darryl Powell, hoping that he was going to change things around because of what he did at Cass. Are they going to put all their eggs into the basket of Sam Burgess, and then he makes it big, goes back to Woz, and then why start all over again?
Well, what I would say to that, and I think, one of the things that he's not lost on Warrington fans, but maybe lost to the wider community of rugby league, I think it's a masterstroke that Gary Chambers is going to be director of rugby at Warrington. That's been long overdue. And the thing about Gary Chambers is he's done a lot of work in the academy, in the reserves. So this bit, what we're talking about, the likes of, these, I mean, and Steph, I know that, hopefully it's going to be the same for Leigh with a reserve team coming in the future. But when you look at the likes of Leeds, you look at Saints, you look at Wigan, these teams that have had academies and reserves and are bringing players through all the time, that continuity, Gary Chambers is big on that. So I think, for me, I'm pleased they've done that, because even if we would have brought Holbrook in, I think that's something that Warrington need to do. We've lost a lot of good players over the years to other teams because we don't promote from within. And we've got some really good talent. Believe me, there's some really good talent coming through at Warrington, but they need the opportunity to play. So I think Gary Chambers in that director of rugby role, really good. Before I come to you, Steph, just going into the chat here, Kev Worrell, he's got a good feeling about him, which is good for Kev. He says that if they don't respect Sam, the expectation of the club is too high. I just hope this is the right decision. Sam will get his support. Greg Roach, don't understand the wire swing from wanting a proven and experienced coach to going. And I agree with that, Greg. All the rhetoric when Darryl Powell got the sack was, we want Justin Holbrook, we want the experience in this, that, the other. Holbrook turns us down, and all of a sudden we're bringing a rookie in. Only the club can answer for that. By all accounts, he interviewed well. They were really impressed with him. I mean, Sam Burgess, I met him at the Gods of League, where he, Peacock and Morley went on the road doing their speaking circuit, and he is a very articulate, very knowledgeable individual. Is Sam Burgess? Can he produce for Warrington? Time will tell. What's your take, Steph?
Yeah, I think Derek touched on it last night, which I thought was really insightful in terms of, you're talking about probably one of the biggest coaching jobs in British Rugby League at Warrington, and not. I mean, obviously the league position's not been great the last season, and obviously they had a great start to this season, and then they're fading away a little bit now. That's why Powell's gone. But it is one of the biggest jobs in rugby league, and there's a lot of pressure that comes with that job, as Powell has found out to his detriment, kind of thing.
Yeah. Sam
is probably one of the greatest forwards that this country's ever produced. So if that doesn't command respect from players, I don't know what will. So I think he's got that going for him. Yes, he is unproven in a coaching perspective. However, Warrington's team on paper is unbelievably good and should be performing right at the very top of Super League, and was for the first 8 rounds of this season. Yeah. So there's no reason why, even with only a small bit of recruitment, that they couldn't be a very, very good grand final winning side. He's got that X factor. The Russell Crowe called him the sparkly-eyed man, I think. If you ever watch that documentary on him, which was amazing. So he's got potential to do that, and he could be somebody that could come in and change Warrington's fortunes. Could be in the operative word there, because it'll go for me one or two ways. It'll either be, you're winning a Challenge Cup and a grand final, or you're sacking him after a year and a half. I think it's as cut and dry as that. Hopefully, for my friends at Warrington, he's going to come in and revolutionise it and bring some. One thing you can say is he'll bring something back to that club and give him some passion and leadership, because he was always that as a player. He was always a leader. He was always respected, and he was always feared. And I think that fear thing is not to be underestimated either in terms of a coach, because he will command respect from those players. I 100% guarantee that.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely spot on, mate. It's going to be fascinating to see how it goes. It could go either way. time will tell. Yes, mate.
On that, can I just say something on the back of what Steph just said there? It's interesting that I watched Fox News 360 this morning, and one thing that they'd mentioned was that the South's players always seem to look at Sam as the man for the answers. So whether he's the head coach or not, if he can do it at the Souths, there's no chance he's not going to do it at Wire. So I think what Steph said, his leadership there is just, unmatched.
Mate, you listen to the Aussies. I mean, you listen to anybody in the NRL. You listen to the Aussies and what they say about Sam Burgess. Sam Burgess is actually, they put him on a pedestal. He's almost the glorified Aussie. I mean, they're so impressed. I mean, James Graham as well, he's sort of making a bit equally revered. I mean, Moz as well. But those are the three for me that have gone over there. I mean, Bateman obviously had a good first stint in the NRL, but those are the three that have commanded respect for the British game in the NRL. And Sam Burgess, he's revered. He's absolutely, there's no doubt he will end up back in Australia. He will end up probably at some point the South Sydney Rabbitohs coach. All eyes on him. Can he actually deliver some success at Warrington? If he does, he'll be back there sooner rather than later. Right, we'll go back to Leigh. Just take your take on this one, Joel. We got our take on it last night. Lachlan Lamb remains at Leigh till 2025, as does Kai O'Donnell. Two massive signings to keep those two in place. What was your thoughts on that, Joel?
Huge. It just shows, doesn't it, that Leigh are intending to stay, but not just stay, they want to win. I think having someone like Lamb around is going to help, any team. But I think the momentum that Leigh have been carrying through has just been, I think, a breath of fresh air. We've not seen that in the league for quite some time now. So it's nice to see somebody else challenging. And having players like Lamb, who could quite easily go back to NRL to stay in Super League, is a massive thing for our league.
Couldn't agree more. It sounds like your dog agrees. Was that Lammy saying in the background? Lamb. Is that what he's saying? Anyway, that's another story. Speaking of Leigh, and speaking also of Hull KR, and we'll talk about the Challenge Cup final a little bit later on. But Steph, you were talking about Tyrone May potentially being a target for Leigh for next season. Hull KR today also rumoured to be in the arm wrestle for Tyrone May. Won't push you on that one, but it would appear that not only have we got a Challenge Cup to compete for, but the signature of Tyrone May now between Leigh and Hull KR. Yeah,
you nicked my little punchline there. I was going to say, who may we sign for next season? We'll get Derek on for another exclusive on one of those, I think, maybe.
Yes.
It's going to be interesting. And I think the other one there is that Ipapi signed a 3-year deal at the beginning of this season, so he's done till 2025 as well. Asiata and Amon are in contract talks to extend. They're already in for next season to put any of those speculations to bed, which I know there's been an NRL rumblings about those ones. So they're signed up, as Derek confirmed, for next season, looking to extend to 2025, hopefully. So it seems like I know there's a recruitment plan at Leigh, and it's a 5-year plan. I've been privileged to speak with Adrian and Chris Chester about what they're trying to do at Leigh, and I know that that's their plan, and it's going to form around that nucleus of players, of ones that we all know that other clubs are coming in for because they've been so good in Super League this season, and they're all staying. And that should give Leigh fans, we're not going to be a one-trick pony, hopefully. We are here for the long term, and we are building something. And now it's just about getting that recruitment right. We know that, I think Owen Trout's the worst rumour in worst kept secret, should I say, in rugby at the moment, that, we're going to be getting those younger lads coming in and English players as well. So we're not taking quota spots.
And that's interesting, Steph. That's really interesting what you're saying there about Trout. I know that's not been confirmed, but, great up and coming player, young kid. But this is the interesting thing, isn't it? Leigh are tying down players, the culture, what's happening at Leigh. The players don't want to go anywhere else because they sense something is coming. When you look at Trout leaving Huddersfield, when you look at Walters leaving Leeds, and yet Leigh are retaining, I think that just speaks volumes. Speaks volumes for where Leigh currently are in the pecking order. I mean, Leigh wouldn't dream. I mean, I'm not even comparing Leigh and Leeds in terms of recent history, and you can't do that. It's chalk and cheese. But right here, right now, it's Leigh that's got the structure. It's Leigh that's got the buzz. It's Leigh that's retaining talent.
Yeah,
people are getting excited about Leigh, not on terraces, but also players wanting to join it.
Yeah,
and that's the That's fantastic.
It is, but there's also being a Leigh fan, you don't want to get ahead of yourself. And I'm not naive enough to think that we've come and we've made it now. This could, in a second, we could be.
Absolutely.
I know you say we're guaranteed for the playoffs, but we're not. Mathematically, we're not.
No, you're not. You will.
But we've got tough games coming up, and I've watched Leigh long enough and I've watched other teams. Look at Warrington. At the start of this season, you won the first 8. Look where you are now. Look at Salford, look at OKR. It can go wrong very, very quickly. Yes, Leigh are putting everything in place. And yes, we are doing all the right things. And hopefully that will bear fruit. And it should do. There's no reason why it shouldn't. And long may it continue in what we're doing. But we've got to get everything right. And we've also not got to get complacent, which I know they're not. And that's part of Adrian Lamb and Chris Chester. What they brought into the thing is we're not complacent. We have to work hard for everything that we're getting, and you've got to keep doing that. Otherwise, you will start to drift. And I've no doubt that they will do, and I've every confidence that they will do. But that's always got to be at the back of our minds.
Absolutely. And of course, we'll get to Huddersfield in a minute, but Huddersfield late push from the mighty Giants. The Cowbell Army are getting excited down there in Huddersfield at the moment. We'll talk about that.
Didn't I call this a few weeks ago and you all thought I was talking daft?
Well, mate, you obviously are closer to it than I am. But yeah, I mean, 4 on the spin. I mean, even by your optimism, 4 on the spin, mate. I think the one for me was Catalan. That was just totally unexpected. And, I was saying on In the Sheds, if it weren't for you, I think Catalan would be on something like an 11, 12, 13 game unbeaten streak. I mean, incredible. So I said, nobody saw that one coming. But when it came, it's obviously reinvigorated you and away you go, which is to your credit. Right then, one last thing. I don't know if you saw this. I read League Express earlier today. Really sad news coming out of Leeds Express today. Paul Gill, former Leeds player from the 80s, played for Leeds from 82 to 89, has been diagnosed with MND. I mean, dearie me, with Rob and now, another former player in Paul Gill. I mean, those Leeds fans, heart to go out to the families, heart to go out to the club, because you're having it tough where that particular disease is concerned at the moment. Really, really bad news.
Yeah, it's just hard. I mean, we all know watching what Rob has gone through in his family. It's just the most, that alongside Alzheimer's is just the most horrific, disease. And as one of the things I think that Derek put across last night is we are a rugby league family, and we do come together when things need to be addressed like this. And our hearts all go out to them, and whatever support they need, I'm sure everybody will get behind.
Rally.
It's cruel,
and luckily you know that the Leeds club and Sinfield and Rob and everybody, they'll rally round. They'll rally round.
Absolutely.
What about yourself, Joel? Any comment on that, mate?
It seems to be happening all the time now. It's quite a nasty disease that a lot of people seem to be getting. A friend of mine, his brother's just found out that he's got it. So, but you talked about rugby league being a community. It kind of reminds you of what communities used to be like back in the day. Everyone rallies around together, no matter what you've got or how much you've got. You'll give and help and just be there for each other. And rugby league's never lost that. It's always been known as a family game, hasn't it? So it's a beautiful thing to see in sport, because you don't see it in many others, really.
No, greatest game on earth, mate, and greatest community. To be a part of the rugby league family is something that none of us should take for granted, because we're a special bunch of people. Yes, we might have a bit of rivalry. Yes, we take the mickey out of each other and this, that, the other. But at our core, we just love the game and we respect people that are part of the community. Yeah, really, really bad news that. So let's try and pick the mood back up. But no, our thoughts go out to Paul Gill, his family, and the best of luck to them.